And we see that Feyre and Rhys agree to not play roles anymore. So they are going to be their true selves and not play for Rhys the, bad guy role. And for Feyre, the temptress role that she had been thrust into.
Thrust.
So, yes, thrust Sandra.
Hello. Welcome back to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tera. Did you hear it that time?
No, Tera is, I guess her stomach is very vocal this afternoon, but I don't hear it. Maybe it'll come up.
It wants to talk about part 2 of A Court of War and Ruin. So Wings and Ruin. Well, it's ACOWAR, which makes sense. Like, I don't know if she planned like the abbreviations as she wrote these, and she's like, I have to make it spell war because that's what's happening in the second half is the war. But I choose to believe she's like Taylor Swift and is a mastermind and it has planned all of this. So
yes, probably. There are no coinky dinks in the Massverse, right?
Yeah.
As Tera said, we are covering chapters 37 onward. So the second half of A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas today. So we're going to be doing some fun, spoilery discussion, like a quick review of the second half. If you missed last week's episode of the first half, go ahead and go back and watch that. We are currently hosting a very in-depth read-along for the entire ACOTAR series, previously doing the Throne of Glass series. And then what are we going to do next, Tera?
Crescent City.
Woo! So excited.
Hope to have that right around the time the third book is coming out in the Crescent series. And if you are staying tuned with Sarah J Maas and all of the interviews that she is doing, she is hinting that there are more to this series. So I'm sure that we will pick that up too.
Yes. So there's going to be a lot of spoilers. So if you haven't read this, maybe, mute your earbuds, but continue on at your own risk. So
yeah, I'm not sure muting your earbuds is a good idea, Sandra, where they just like watch us talk. That might be kind of funny, actually, because I talk with my hands a lot.
Tera does talk a lot with her hands. Like this.
And the faces. And like, yes.
Yeah. So the first half of A Court of Wings and Ruin kicks off. There's a little skirmish in the summer court, and Rhysand touches down on a ship. That ship has Hybern. Where does this book pick up? You want to talk about that scene?
So this book picks up with him and Hybern facing off, and we find out that it's like a hologram of Hybern, and boo, because Rhys was about to like use his powers on him.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, right? Because I feel like they mentioned it was some kind of old magic or old spell that let him project himself here. But there's also like this black box that Hybern is carrying around that also kind of mutes magic and weakens it. Interesting. So, but at least our boy's okay, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then we go into a meeting with Tarquin because there's still the blood rubies, the like death orders on all of our inner circle's heads for stealing from Tarquin, but they still came to help him, and Tarquin is just not happy with them, even though they just saved his ass.
He's still grumpy. He's like, get the fuck out. He's like, thanks, but get out.
Yes.
Leave the summer court.
And we see that Feyre and Rhys agree to not play roles anymore. So they are going to be their true selves and not play for Rhys the, bad guy role. And for Feyre, the temptress role that she had been thrust into.
Thrust.
So, yes, thrust, Sandra. Get your mind out of the gutter.
I'm like, you're the one that used the word.
It's a perfectly innocent word, okay? If your mind is not in the gutter.
Back at the townhouse, so after the thrown out of summer court for their shenanigans, we get to check in with the other Archeron sisters. Elaine is baking, Nesta is helping, and so, they're slowly kind of coming back to their own. I have more is jealous question mark here. I'm like, I can't even remember what she might have been jealous about. Do you remember?
I think she was giving off that vibe because of the growing feelings between Cassian and Nesta at this point.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. She's just like watching them interact, right?
And she's seeing Cassian like stare at Nesta and like want to help her and want to protect her.
Yeah, Cassian is so just smitten by Nesta. She is nasty Nesta, but Cassian is just like lapping it up.
What is that song? That's my type. I feel like Cassian has a type with the like nasty women. Like you gotta hold your own in order to like catch Cassian's eye. Because I mean, Moore can hold her own. Nesta, yeah.
Meanwhile, Feyre is just like, there is no way I'm going to be able to look into this Ouroboros mirror and get that for the bone carver. I need to go back and talk to him and try and make him change his bargain. She gets the big R for rejected. And he's like, nope, sorry. And then there's the matter of the High Lord meeting. So Nesta is beginning to get these little inklings that things are happening. Like she is somehow connected to the cauldron because she took more of it. And so, the inner circle decides we need to hurry up and rush this High Lord meeting, make it happen. Someone pick a freaking location to host this thing. And it gets hosted at Dawn Court, where Thiessen is the High Lord. And then first to arrive is Helion of the Day Court, Callias of Winter Court, and his wife, which is kind of a cute scene with Moore. Vivian, I think, is his wife's name. You want to talk about who else kind of arrives and who is last to arrive very awkwardly?
So Baron arrives next, right? With his sons, which also is awkward because at this point in time, Feyre is like, wait a minute, there's some like resemblance here. And I think this is also where she finds out that there had been a little bit of shenanigans with Lucien's mother and Helion, who apparently is fine as fuck. But anyway, so there was some shenanigans, and Feyre's like, wait, Lucien looks a lot like this dude. Like, there's some resemblance. Has nobody else ever noticed this? We also find out the Baron, the reason Lucien's mom is the way she is he basically tortured her after he found out and made her stay because, according to some Fae, they own their mates. And so she stayed, and he kind of broke her. And I think some of that was in order to protect Lucien because he was her favorite. And even her protecting him, like, she gave something to Feyre for protecting him when she was under the mountain. Like, he was hers to protect. Like, everybody else, she's like, fine, do what you want with. But Lucien is the one that she protects. And I have a feeling that some of that staying was in order to protect Lucien from his dad. But anyway, so next, very awkwardly, comes in Tamlin, who they were like, didn't think you were coming because you were on the wrong side, dude. And he proceeds to
stare first.
Just like awkwardness ensues with his staring, and then also for calling out like Feyre as a whore and all of her shenanigans while she was at Spring Court and like undermining him and stuff. It was just very awkward. And the rest of the like High Lords were like, I think that this would be better like in private.
Yeah, listening to the graphic audio for this, because you remember back to the first book whenever Tamlin comes banging down the door to get Feyre and haul her away to Spring Court, and in the graphic audio version of this scene, like you hear the same stuff happen, just like this rush of magic and this kind of rage, and Tamlin shows up. There's not even a chair available for him. The meeting has already started and he just like shows up And they're like, oh, servants, grab him another chair. Let's put him between those people. And it's like directly across from Feyre. I'm imagining them like kind of sitting in a big circle, you know, having their little High Lord and I'm plus lady. It's a secret, I think, at the very beginning. But he, like, Tamlin's eyes are on Rhys's hand as it's like resting on Feyre's knee. And then he's just like, you know that something crazy is going to come out of his mouth, just his mannerisms. And then he's like, oh, or congratulations in order. And then it just like completely devolves after that. And it's just so cringy.
I don't think it's a secret because isn't this when she wears like the really gorgeous dress and the crown that she picked out the night before?
Yeah, that's not a secret, but her magic is. It's not until there's a bunch of brawls and drama plays out from this.
Yes.
First with Tamlin.
Yeah, and Rhys shuts him up. He like takes his voice away from him with his magic, and they're all like looking at him like, I didn't know you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then all of the High Lords are a little bit afraid of Rhys because, again, he's showing off the fact that he is the most powerful Prynthian High Lord ever. And then there are some comments made from Baron towards Rhys about him being the whore of Amarantha and like just laying into him.
Getting on his knees for Highburn and then spreading his. And that's when like Feyre loses it.
Yes. And Feyre blows up and it is no longer a secret that she has everybody's powers because she uses them against Baron and only stops. Wasn't it Azriel that stops her?
It was Rhys. I think he like said something to like calm her down. But I mean, she was going through the entire list of powers that she inherited from each of the High Lords and making Baron suffer.
The time I was thinking is Azriel goes after him.
Oh too. No, Azriel thing with with more. Because is it Baron? Yeah, it's Baron. Mm-hmm. Like, good to know you. Oh, no, it was Eris. You still dress like a slut after all these centuries. And Az just like snaps, like our shadow singer.
And Feyre calms him down.
It's just our inner circle is unhinged during this meeting.
I was about to say they might need some anger management classes or something because they're all losing their shit.
Mm-hmm. That one scene, though, where Feyre shows Baron, you know, what's what with all of the power that she's inherited, though, you have to give it to Tamlin in that scene because I forget who turns to Tamlin, but they're like, you knew the whole time, you know, about Feyre's magic. And he was like, it's none of your business. Like, he doesn't answer it still. Like, he never told a soul about it still. So you have to, like, give him a little tiny shred of whatever. But it's just so awkward. Like, he has to be feeling so much to have, you know, someone that he's still very obviously in love with married to his nemesis.
Yes. And so Feyre then makes this elaborate speech about how we should be protecting those who can't protect themselves. And she manages to sway the women, which I thought was hilarious. So Vivian, who is Callias's woman, and then who was the other woman that was like, I'll join? Oh, Cressida. So they joined. They're like, I'll fight with you. And then they like pointedly looked at their like High Lords, right? Like Vivian's like looking at her husband like, if you don't join, you can't protect me, basically. So you might want to join. And then Cressida's looking at her uncle. Is Tarquin her uncle? Cousin?
Brother?
Something like that.
Brother.
And she's like, come on.
Step up.
And so then they end up getting 6 on their side because Helion joins and then Tarquin and the K1, Callias.
Callias.
Callias. And Thesis.
Thesan.
Okay. I have these written down.
Oh, these damn names. There's only like 20 people in this scene, Tera.
I know. The only one that is not willing to join yet is Baron. He has to think about it.
Yes, he has to think about it. And then Tamlin says he's joined, but no one trusts him. Like, they all think that he's aligned with Hybern and is a mole. So they don't want to say anything in front of him, which, understandable.
One of the funniest scenes to me, and it goes to show like how like unswayed Nesta is on anything, is Hellion. Like was trying to hit on her, and she's like, "I'm busy," and walks off, and he's just like, "What the hell? Like that's never happened."
Yeah, Helion, I mean, he's kind of like, I'm imagining someone like kind of Adian. He goes both ways, can have whatever lover he wants, And then there was even a scene when Helion when he first met Nesta, he was like hitting on her, and she was just like, I don't care, like, go away. And then it was after this whole meeting, Helion, doesn't he kind of like solicit more Az and Cassian at the same time?
Oh, he has been soliciting those three for a long time, apparently, because he goes both ways, and he likes them at the same time, it says in the book. And so, yes, he has been working on getting the three of them together. But as we know, the three of them are not in a situation to be together. So he's barking up the wrong tree there. But I mean, I don't necessarily blame him for giving a shot, shooting his shot.
It's like after this meeting, everyone decides, they've barely scratched the surface with everything that they need to talk about and plan. And so everyone spends the night at Dawn Court. And there's a scene between Feyre and Rhysand. They're lying in bed, and she's just like, I can't have sex right now. Knowing Tamlin is under the same roof as us, like, I can't have sex right now. But meanwhile, they can hear Mor and Helion getting it on in the room next door because, yeah, that happened. And Az decided to disappear.
Yes. But did he? Because I watched an interview with Sarah J Maas, and she's like, Az is kinky, and he can disappear into his shadows. As we've seen, like, is he like a voyeur? Is he like watching what's going on?
Wait, I need to see this interview. Where is this? I mean, I could totally see that happening with Azriel, but
Yeah, I forgot what she called him. She said he was very kinky, and that he is a freak.
Oh,
and she's like, I mean that in the nicest possible way, but he's a freak. So like,
quiet ones.
Mm-hmm. The reserved ones.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe when he disappears, he's not actually disappearing, which I think would be like a betrayal. But anyway.
Yeah. Interesting. I would have to see this interview. That's an interesting thing for Maas to say. Meeting continues the next day. Nesta is sick.
Yes.
Because why? Didn't she have kind of like inklings of stuff happening the day before, but like nothing happened immediately? Yeah,
they all went searching to figure out what was going on. And she's like, something is happening. We need to leave now. We need to leave. And like, so Az and Cassian and Rhys like checked everywhere. They checked with Amren to make sure Valaris was okay. They checked the like human world. Nothing was happening. And so then she gets really, really sick, and we see something snap, and the wall is destroyed. And that was what she was feeling, is the cauldron was getting ready to power on. Yes. So now they're in oh shit mode and have to figure out how to damage control and stop, everything from escalating more with Hybern. So Elaine has an idea for where humans can go to seek refuge. And that's back at Grayson's estate in the mortal realm, which I'm sure is going to be a wonderful reunion, right? And then the Bat Boys need to go check on things at the Illyrian camp. And then Feyre, again, wants to try and tie down some last-minute allies to help with the coming battle. So we want to tackle these? Yeah, so she goes to Bryaxis, and that is like the whatever it is at the bottom of the library. And she's like, hey, you want to fight for us? And he's like, well, if you can show me the stars and the sun, then I will. And Amren went with her because they needed to know if they could like let him out, right? And so Amren's there, and Feyre's like, I'm not sure that I can do that. And Amren's like, he wants a freaking window, dum-dum. and so Feyre's like, oh yeah, I can do that. And so they made their bargain, and she goes back to lay in bed with Rhys, right? Because this is what she was doing while like their last night sleeping before the war starts.
Mm-hmm. It's weird that these giant death creatures, like all they want is just something simple, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it might just kind of harken back to their worlds no longer existing, maybe, because we don't really know where they're from. We know some worlds were destroyed, and so it's just like, well, where else are they supposed to go type of thing. So it's interesting that the Bone Carver just wants the mirror, and then Braxis just wants a window at the top of the library. Almost kind of cute.
Well, but it also harkens like back to like they've been housed in their prisons for so long that has become their home, and they've made it the best that they can. And they don't know if they get out of there, if it's going to actually be better than what they've got. And, you know, if they can get like the thing that they want there, then they don't have to move or whatever again.
And then back in the Mortal Lands, everything is just going swimmingly with Elaine and Grayson's reunion. So they have this genius plan to glamour Elaine and make her look human, while everybody else decides to lay wards down to further protect the estate. And Elaine's just like, no, they have special hounds trained to detect Fae. Like, it's not ever going to work, but we can try. And so there's a scene. They're like, oh, you know, Elaine has come to see her betrothed. And so she's allowed a party with him, I guess. And they just see right through it. And remember who's there?
Jurian.
Jurian.
And Jurian is on the side of the humans again. And Feyre's like, but you were broke. Like, Amarantha broke you. And he's like, no, I've just been acting. Like, we're all good. I'm good here. And they're like, but you wanted to find Miriam. And he's like, again, acting. It's fine. And he's like, that's what they expected of me, so that's what I gave them. And he has been helping feed information to the humans and telling them that the queens like sold them out, and then also telling them that he plans on attacking them and where and stuff. And so Jurian is firmly on the side of the humans, and thus on the side of Rhys and team. But we also find out that Tamlin went running back to Hybern to tell all about the meeting and to give away some of the secrets, including that they have like the antidote, right?
Is that what he did? I couldn't remember what he did, or if he was still trying to like get information from Hybern and them to help everybody else.
Well, I mean, yes. But at this point, we're just told that he ran back. But he is playing like a fourth agent here. Because he is first saying he's on Hybern's side, and then going to our High Lords and saying that he's on their side, and then going back to like Hybern and saying, hey, because I pretended to be on their side, I got all of this information for you. But then he actually is on Rhys's side. And so he is like getting information from the start, relaying it, then relaying it back, and then relaying it back a fourth time. So like, he's not just a double agent. He's like a quadruple agent. I'm, again, not sure how he's keeping all of this straight. Like, who am I supposed to tell what to?
Yeah. But at this estate, like, it's so heartbreaking. This was the first time for Elaine that I just felt really, really bad with her, because Grayson was brutal. Just the hatred dripping off of him, the words that he spoke to her, and she's just a sobbing mess.
Even his dad was like, dude, calm down.
Yeah.
Like, and his dad was the one that we heard about that was like instilling all of this into him. And he's like, that's like vicious, dude.
He was just like, I will never marry you. I will let your people come here. I'll protect them, but never you. And it was just like, Nesta walks up and just wallops him in her high fae form, you know, just knocking him a good one. So deserved.
And then we have our first battle. And the only thing I took out of this first battle is Cassian in battle. Like that scene where he's like laying out people. I'm like, ooh, hi.
What were you picturing? Like a Troy, Brad Pitt kind of thing? Just like him flying through the air, attacking large groups of men, just like muscled, like his helmet, the way it's described, like the raven wings, like flaring
Yeah, all
up
three of
above
them.
his ear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, he's like a god of battle or something out there, right?
Yeah, and even like the Illyrians were like staring at him like, holy shit.
Yes. Feyre's like, this is who's been training me all this time.
Yeah. Well, it mentioned that like, you know, the last time they saw him in battle was during the first war, right? And he was young at that point, and they're like, holy crap, he has gotten better.
And it helps too that Jorian was like, attack the right flank or whatever, you know, because that's where they're weak and stuff. So they were able to like put this battle to rest very swiftly. And then I can't remember because Miriam and Draken, Jorian had warned them, and that's why they disappeared, you know, allegedly, is because Jorian was acting like he was going after Miriam, right? To exact his revenge or whatever, get that closure.
So Nesta noticing that Cassian was hurt, like you see a different side in her for the very first time, like the caring side, other than with Elaine. And she's like, you're hurt. And he's like, oh, it'll be okay. And Rhys is mad because he's like, you know better than to like continue to fight if you're hurt, you know? And he's like, it's okay. It was just, she's like, will you get better? And he's like, yeah. It was just funny to me because she was like not the feisty, like, I hate you.
Yeah, she was softer.
She was worried
and she
about
was
him.
the only one who's been watching Cassian like a hawk to be able to tell like his little micro,
like,
you know,
his
pains.
hand was hurting.
Yeah.
And then we find out that Hybern is actually going to the Winter Court next. Like he has another band of troops going that direction. So we find out that, hey, we need to be heading a different direction. And Feyre gets the bright idea, hey, I need actual information from the Suriel. Like I need to know where his big army is, and I need to like be able to really track what's going on in this battle, because it seems like he is playing us and we don't have enough information. So she goes and she's going to track down the Suriel again. And he is giving her information and he tells her, you know, I told you to stay with the High Lord, stay with the High Lord. Like I meant Rhys, stay with the High Lord. And then he also tells her that, you know, if she does look in the Ouroboros, it's up to her whether or not it will break her. Like she gets to choose if it's going to break her. And so she feels a little bit better about that after seeing him. And then we see Iantha, or Iantha, whatever, however you say her name. And she attacks and she shoots the Suriel, and she is trying to get Feyre. And Feyre leads them to the Weaver's cottage. And Ianthe, being the dumb, like higher than like thou person, doesn't notice or realize that she is doing this on purpose. And she's like, well, I'll kill whoever's in there with you too. And like just being vicious. And then she walks in, she's like, where are we? And then she gets unalived.
This was such a ruthless scene for Feyre. Because first off, to even find the Suriel, she needed help. So she got Elaine to kind of tell where it was, right? To scry, kind of, is what I kind of got the sense of. And she was like, okay, it's here. And the Weaver in the wood. But then when Feyre is using her power to hold that door open, because as soon as the Weaver senses someone in her house, everything gets locked down. And so Feyre is using all of her might to keep this door open so that Ianthe and her guards come in. And then she's just like, oh, yes, I've brought you dinner, and leaves them. And you just hear the ripping and shredding and spraying and screams. And it's just so gross. And she then goes back to the Suriel, which is the saddest, one of the saddest scenes in this entire damn book. There were a few sad scenes that got me, but like this one was so heartbreaking.
Yes. And she asks him why he's been helping her. And he's like, well, because you helped. Like, you wanted to help people. And she's like, oh.
Yeah, like kind.
So she stays with him. And much like she did with the Fae that was killed by Amarantha, like, she stays with them because she doesn't want to leave, right? And Helion comes. And he's like, we gotta go. And she's like, no, I'm staying. Like, I'm staying until he passes. And so Helion, once he does pass, gives him like a burial, which is basically lighting him on fire and burning his body and whatnot. But before he dies, he tells her to make the world a better place. It's so sweet for somebody like we like met him as like this scary, like, just skin and bones, weird, like, looking creepy person.
Yeah.
He turned out to be one of the saddest deaths.
And then when Feyre made, Helion take off the robe and give it to the Suriel, like the new cloak, like
before he died, like
that.
Before he lit him on fire. Like,
yeah. And then they winnow back away to the camp. I think it's back to everyone being pissed off at Feyre because she decided to do this in the midst of the second battle. And she kind of tricked Mor into just letting her go, and no one knew where the hell she was. And so everyone was pissed off, especially Mor. And so, yeah.
And Cassian's hurt again. Poor boy is just like, isn't this the one where he's like gutted, basically?
Yes. Like, I think this is the one where Azrael had to like hold his intestines, like insides and stuff. And because it was just a huge, just slit him open like a butcher.
Yes. And so we then see that Nesta has been searching for the cauldron, and that the cauldron has found Elaine. So as one is searching for the other is searching. And so we see the King of Highburn send somebody to get Elaine and bring her back. And he does this by like basically showing her what she wants. She wanted Grayson to come and say, I want to marry you. Like, let's run away. And so she goes out there and runs away. Meanwhile, Feyre is having a dream of everything that's happening with the cauldron. Like, she's dreaming of this scene between Elaine and Grayson, and she's dreaming of like its effects and things like that. And so she decides that she wants to get her sister back, and obviously Nesta wants to get her back because, like, I feel like Nesta treats her like she's her daughter as opposed to her sister. And so, like, this is Nesta's baby. We're going to go get her back. And so they bank on the fact that they would not have heard that Ianthe is dead yet. And Feyre transforms into Ianthe and, like, walks up haughtily to, like, the tent. And she's like, let me in.
And I will sleep with you later.
Is flirting with all of them, yes. And she sees a Children of the Blessed girl that's being like basically stuck up and burned, I guess, like on a stake.
Claire bettered.
Yes. So she is in there with Az. Az agreed to go, which I think there's something going on with Az and Elaine. But anyway, he is like, I'm going. Like, me. Put me in, coach. And Feyre's like, I'm going too. And so they both go and they get to Elaine, they get her out, and Feyre's like, well, we have to save the like Children of the Blessed person too. And so Az is like trying his best to shield everything and also like get the two girls out. And Feyre has to put her flying lessons to the test. And they are being chased by the hounds that Highburn has there. And she feels something running with them too, but she doesn't really know what it is. And then right as she gets to the edge of the cliff, she figures out that it's Tamlin, and he is attacking the hounds and sends just a little gush of wind to help her take off. So at least at this point in time, Tamlin is on our side.
It kind of felt like that Beauty and the Beast scene, right? In the woods fighting off the wolves because he's just surrounded by these things, all fangs and claws snarling. They're ripping in, biting into him. And he just kind of makes that sacrifice to give away that he's not under Hybern to help them escape. I think Azriel was pretty torn up with this whole thing too. Like, he was shot and Azriel is fucking flying with 2 women under his wing.
Yes, he was shot in his wings and Feyre was shot in the shoulder. And they like altered their Feybane because they knew that they had like an antidote.
Yeah.
And then we get to see the Blessed be like kind of brought in with the Winter Court because they have furry animals at the Winter Court, so they thought that that might be like a nicer place for her to go.
Polar bears.
And yes, and they're like, well, I guess bears are furry, but they thought that that might be like less of a drastic move for this like human. And her name is Briar, which I thought was very Disney-like because Briar Rose is Sleeping Beauty. Like, that's her name. And so I'm like, ooh, we're tying in another, like,
I didn't know
Disney
that.
movie.
Nice call out.
And then we also get to see Mor and Feyre, like, apologize to each other and Mor explain why what Feyre said about her lying about her love for Az hit her so hard, which is because she loves Az, but not in the way he loves her, because she likes girls and she has been like, I mean, she doesn't dislike the men, but like she likes girls more, and she has been sleeping with men just to kind of cover her tracks.
You definitely get the sense that Mor would sleep with Azriel if she knew that he wouldn't like get more connected and in love through that act, right?
Yeah, it's not like she's not attracted to him, she just doesn't love him in the same way he loves her.
Yeah. And then she talked about how sleeping with Helion was her way of reminding Azriel that they will never get together, like to try and knock him down a peg, like in that way, which is kind of brutal. It's like, Mor, just communicate. This is your inner circle.
I get that it's hard, and she hasn't told anybody about this until Feyre, but I feel like Az and Cassian and Mor have shared so much already that like they should be able to share this.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that they would judge her in any way. Cassian would probably be like, oh, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, you made the comment last episode, you're still team Shadow Singer. Yeah, you liked Cass, the gruffness of him, and then you're like, no, it's gotta be Azriel.
Yes, Azriel's still my dude. Like, I mean, I like Helion too, just because like I like his swagger. But Az is still my dude. Like you see so many sides of him and like his little tortured soul. I want him to find happiness.
Yeah, you do want him to be happy. You see so many sides of him, but there's also just this mystique about him that you cannot like get to yet. So for sure.
He both wears his heart on his sleeve and hides it.
Yes.
Which is like a very weird conundrum. And you want to know more about it, but you also like the parts he shows you just draw you into.
It makes you so curious about his power because it's so unlike the rest of them. I mean, he can literally just become shadows, right? It almost kind of reminded me of how Briaxis is described as just being like this little shadow cloud of terror and fear, you know, that kind of moves around.
But you don't get the terror and fear from Az. Which again, we keep seeing like these gods of death. And I'm wondering if like one of them figured out how to mate. And so he's like not a human, but a fae mixed with a god of death. And so he doesn't have all of the powers, but he has enough. And that's why his family like threw him out, because it's kind of like Lucian, where they all knew that he was not Baron's. And or suspected that he was not Baron's, at least. And so I'm wondering if that's why his family didn't like him, because they suspected at the bare minimum that he was not his father's child.
Yes. I think it was the last episode where you made the Hades and Persephone comment. There were at least 2 scenes in A Court of Wings and Ruin where I got the Hades Persephone vibe when Asriel and Elaine were on scene together, just talking about his shadows, immediately followed up by like the flowers and rainbows that she brings behind her.
And that's even more because Persephone is Zeus's daughter, right? And so she has a connection to like the highest power, like lightning bolt, like, you know, whatever. And who is Lucian's dad, like that she like is stealing him from. He has the fire power. Day court powers, you know? And so like he's basically stealing her from the day. So yeah.
I mean, we could dedicate a whole episode talking about who to ship Asriel with, a word that we haven't used in a while compared to like Throne of Glass.
And it wasn't me who used it, guys, because I was ship heavy in the other.
No, there are some debates on who Asriel should be with, and I'm not going to talk about more of this because we'll get there. We'll get there in the series. But anyway, so what's next after this whole Elaine rescue thing?
I think this is actually where Feyre sneaks out at night and goes for the Ouroboros. And she sits there and lets it show her. And basically what it shows her is her, like all of the bad parts of her. And she's like, oh, okay, but like I can accept me. It's still okay. I'm still okay. And so then she brings it to the bone carver. And he's like, okay, I didn't really need that, but I just wanted to see if you were worthy, if you could accept you, if you were worthy of me fighting for you and your people. And so she gets mad again here and she's like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like, you had to see if we were worthy? Like, innocent people aren't just automatically worthy for you? And he's like, no, not really.
It's not a good time to be testing Feyre. She's just very emotional and stressed out right now because I think this is the eve of the big battle, right? And that's why all of these things are happening, like trying to queue up everything that they got in their arsenal and get ready to go. But no, when she's like lying, when they're describing what she saw, it was like that creature, that black furred creature twisted. And she ended up just sobbing and lying on the floor because it's literally replaying every single horrible memory that's been, every death that she has been responsible for. So Clay better, just everything, but it doesn't break her. And then it is the battle.
I loved Rhys's speech about like what each person meant to him.
It made me teary-eyed. It was so good.
He's so like, I'm grateful for you. Now let's go make Hybern ungrateful for knowing us. I was like, yes.
I mean, he spoke to like each group of his family, right? It just felt so like deeper than just a fellowship or friendship. It was just like a true family. I loved it.
And then I thought it was also cute because they're like lining up for battle and Feyre was like, hey, I have a present. Like, I never got you a mating present. And she's like, so I got you one now. And she lets her glamour go. And it's Abraxas, or not Abraxas, that's in a different book. That would be cool, though. I did write Abraxas. What's his name?
Briaxus.
Briaxus. And the bone carver. And she's like, they're on our side. I made a couple more deals. And he's like, you got the Ouroboros. And he's like, what did it show you? And she's like, a lot of things. And then he's like, well, I got you something too. And out comes the Weaver. And he'd made a deal with the Weaver. And so you have the Briaxus, the bone carver, and the Weaver. And the Weaver and bone carver kind of look at each other. And they're like, oh, hi.
Hey, sis.
And they're going and fighting, which is fantastic for us because, man, do they lay waste.
Yes. But you figure out why Helion was in the woods near the Weaver's house because Rhys was, putting him up to making a bargain with this Weaver woman who is now beautiful, right? They show her like dark haired, just beautiful with all this blood and these souls that she's taking.
We did not hear what the deal was. Did we? Like what he gave up for that? Is it just that he let her eat all the people? Because I think she could have done that anyway.
Yeah. I mean, if she would have left the house, but yeah.
Maybe she was trapped in there like the other ones, and so they let her out, maybe?
Maybe.
In exchange for getting to eat an all-you-can-eat buffet of high-burn men.
She's like, oh, yes. Please tell me more.
Well, and Feyre had to remind Briaxus and the Bone Carver that their people were off limits. Like, this was a hard rule. And, like, she saw them, like, veering off to theirs. And she's like, no, our deal said my people were off limits. You can only eat the high-burn people.
Yeah. Trying to herd a couple of Death Lords, it's got to be. And even the siblings,
even worse
like,
than
are
cats.
they going to attack each other? Because there's a moment, like a weird moment shared between the two. And you're like, oh my God, she's going to try and kill her little brother or whatever. I don't know about you, but reading this whole final battle thing, like, did it feel like Throne of Glass, the final battles that were happening? Just like the hopelessness and loss of everything?
Well, and I was sitting there thinking, like, this isn't the end book either. So I was waiting for another shoe to drop. Because, like, what are we going to do in the next books if we've already beat Hybern? Like, who's our next big bad? Because there's got to be a big bad in following books, right? But who is it? Because if this is, like, the battle, I was either waiting for something else to happen and him to escape again, which we find out he does not escape. So now I'm like, well, who's coming after him? Like, are we going to see the Bone Carver's brother next? And that's who the big bad is, because he's already been introduced and he doesn't sound like a pleasant guy.
Yeah, the death sorcerer of the lake.
Yes.
This battle is awful. So it kicks off, and as it's unfolding, it's kind of like the Witch Towers were in the Throne of Glass series, where they're just like, it's kind of like this huge bomb going off and just killing hundreds of people in one fell swoop. So the Hybern is powering up the cauldron to use it to blast away chunks of their legion and their army. And so there's one where Nesta is involved, and she senses the cauldron ramping up to kill Cassian. And I think it vaporizes like 1,000 of the Illyrians, and she's like screaming to get Cassian's attention and like call him to her. And then all other stuff just starts breaking down too. It's just, I think, was it the Bone Carver that was getting overwhelmed too? Oh no, it gets vaporized.
Ends up dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Weaver was getting overwhelmed, but she is on her own little mission to clear out a way for Amren and the sisters to go to the cauldron and like break it, basically. Like,
yeah.
And at this point, Nesta and Elaine are still with Feyre and Amren. And so we also see that Tamlin shows up with his own fleet, and Jurian shows up with Grayson and their fleet, and Baron shows up with Eris and their fleet. And we see that Baron's sons are attacking the Feybane, and they're blowing it up. So that's nice to at least see that they're using their powers for good at this moment. And then we see that Draken shows up, and it's so funny after the battle, and Draken's like, well, we put too good of a ward on our little island over here, because we only meant it to keep out the bad people, but it apparently kept out the good people too. And so they were on the island the entire time.
Just like living their lives.
Like Valeris was. Like they had their own little like shield on. And so when they heard that Hybern had attacked, they were like, oh, let's go help. And they found somebody along the way. And Sandra, who was that?
Well, there's two people. I think they meet up with the Prince of Merchants first, which is Papa Archeron, which he knew that the mortal queens were going to betray them. He has lived long enough. He used to be wealthy and a man of influence back in the day. So he knows who's who and what's going to happen. So he has been spending all this time away, building his fortune to buy this fleet of ships and to, develop these relationships with other people that can come and help his daughters. You want to talk about the three special things?
And one of those relationships is he found the sixth queen on her little lake island thingy, and talked the person entrapping her into letting her leave for a little bit to go help in this battle.
I mean, that for sure, we didn't hear what the bargain was, right? Because they didn't really explain what he had traded to be able.
No, I don't think so. It just said he traded something. My guess was money, but also like it could have been something else.
Yeah.
But so he gets her, and she's like this little like fire-breathing phoenix, and she is blowing, like she is catching fires to all the ships of Hybern and like just waylaying them. And he comes to his daughters, and right at that time, Hybern shows up and like holds a knife to his neck and tells the daughters that they need to like stop what they're doing, basically. And then he kills them.
Basically, so much shit is happening in this battle that Feyre and Amren have to pretty much make an executive decision, because the original plan was, okay, all three sisters are going to be needed to channel the power of the cauldron, because all of their power combined might be enough to stop it. And that's not how, like, Elaine's pretty much out of pocket the entire time, like just beside herself from the Grace and shit and all of this stuff. Nesta is worried about Cassian because he's mortally wounded. Things are very dire on the field until the Seraphim army comes, Draken's Legion, which I got kind of goosebumps seeing, like picturing them flying from the seas, like these angels kind of with their bird feathers and wings coming to help them. Because there was that moment where Rhys and the Inner Circle were like, this is the end. We're getting surrounded by this mysterious fleet. We have no hope for this. And Rhys goes full like beast mode. Like, this is the first time that we get to see him. And so that was kind of a goosebumps moment. But Amren and Feyre, so they go over to the cauldron, and it's cool how the scene plays out, because Feyre at first is tricked by Amren. Like, Amren kind of shoves her into it by herself, and Feyre's just like, oh my God, Amren tricked us the whole time. Like, she's going to use me to burn out so that she doesn't have to give up her own power. And so Feyre is kind of joining her consciousness with the cauldron, and it's kind of zooming her across the battlefield, where she is this kind of omniscient thing that's overlooking all of these pockets of skirmishes happening all over the place. And so she sees Rhysand, she sees Cassian and Nesta, and then she sees like Hybern coming up on her father and stuff, which Elaine, because we didn't mention that Azriel gave Elaine Truth Teller, the little dagger thing.
Yes. And that was important because, as Rhysand says, he's never entrusted that to anybody, even to touch his blade.
That has a lot of weight to it. Yes. And Elaine, her sweet, sweet soul, just sticks it through the back of like Hybern's neck, and it comes out his throat. And then Nesta, you want to talk about what Nesta does? Because
Nesta comes up and she's like
twisting the blade
around and like decapitates the dude. She's like, I ain't messing with you no more. And then like, holds up his head, like Medusa's head is held up in like the Perseus myth, or Theseus, whatever myth that is. And then somebody comes up to Elaine later, and he's like, oh, I hear you got the killing blow. And she's like, no, I just stabbed him. Nesta did the killing blow.
She's so sweet. Yeah. Like her sweet voice. And just, no, I just stabbed him. Nesta, meanwhile, looks like her mind has like split.
Snapped.
Just gaping at this beheaded king. But Hybern, he had ended up snapping the father's neck. So that was sad. Like, they didn't even get a real reunion. It was just like, oh, I love you, blah, blah, blah. Snap his neck, and he's like dead.
Yeah, and we find out that he named his ships after his daughters that he loved. And then Draken's the one who tells them that, and he's like, I take it you know him? And Rhys is like, yeah, this is my mate, Feyre. This is her sister, Nesta. And this is Elaine. And he's like, oh, okay, so yes, these are the ships we just came on.
And he doesn't even have to, he like already knows who Nesta is too, just based on like how cold she is, right? Like, yes. It's no secret which one is which. So funny.
Yes. And so then we find out that Amren didn't actually betray our team here. She found out through the pages that the Suriel had told them that she could unleash herself. And Feyre is like, but if you unleash yourself, like, you won't remember us. And she's like, well, then just stay still so I don't like get distracted by you. Like, stay where you are, okay? And then I'll know which ones to attack. And so she unleashes herself on Hybern's army, and like the battle is over in 3 seconds because they all start running and she's like, oh, food, and it's over.
She's almost like a death cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were like, she was basically just like grazing past things and they just like died instantly.
Yeah.
Drifting over the entire scene. And then she kind of disappears, like dies at the end of it when she's done.
And then we see that in releasing her, the cauldron is broken into 3 pieces, but what is in there is like oozing out. And Feyre remembers when we were told that if like the cauldron is holding something, and if it gets like released, that's the end of the world. So she's like, well, crap, what do we do now? And so her and Rhys use their powers together to like shore up the cauldron and make it whole again. And Rhys, another really sad scene, tells her he loves her, and that's the like final push of magic that gets it sealed. And she like turns around and Rhys is dead. Like, he's just given up his life for this.
Yeah, he kind of tricked her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so she loses it, and she is begging the High Lords to help her save him, and they're not doing it at first. And then who was the first one? Was it Helion?
I think it was. She was like guilt tripping him hardcore.
Yeah, he said that he will do it. And then Vivian, I think, guilt trips her spouse. And so then they all end up doing it except for Tamlin. And she's like, I will give you anything. Anything, Tamlin, if you will help. And he comes over and he's like, well, be happy. And he gives him his like last thing. And then Rhys comes back to life, which I don't know. Like, if she had a piece of all of them, why couldn't she have given up that piece?
She gave a piece of herself, but I don't know.
For the Night Court. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it had to be like each of the courts officially, but.
Okay. But I was thinking she was going to give up the piece that she got to bring him back, but that didn't happen, obviously.
I mean, in all fairness, I would be acting just like Feyre in this scene, like freaking out, doing anything to bring him back.
Anything.
I will give you my soul.
Yes, please, just bring him back. And so he comes back to life, and Rhys, being Rhys, is just like joking the whole time again. And he's like, well, I brought a little something else. And like, out comes Amren.
Yeah, out of the cauldron.
And she's now like actual Fae. Like, she is no longer whatever she was before. She has now lost that and come out of the cauldron as just Fae. And she's like, hey, I like to like, you know, what you guys gave me is like a normal life. And that was a gift. And I think maybe my dad, when he opened that like kind of like hole in our world, was actually giving me a gift and not a punishment. And so I get to actually live out a life here.
Which Varian is very happy about because he was like all, you know, tears and sadness too when Amren made the decision to sacrifice herself earlier. I
didn't picture Amren as small as like apparently she is, but like when they were talking about her and her armor, and Feyre's like, it looks like children's armor, and Lisa's like, it is, don't tell her.
And there was another scene. They're like, yeah, she's almost as tall as the cauldron, about as tall as the cauldron. So now I'm just imagining.
Not like that was not the size that I pictured her at first, because she's got like such a spirit in her that I was picturing her at least like, you know, a normal size small person, but like no.
No, it was cool when Rhys was describing being dead and he could still hear Feyre because she didn't leave. She stayed with him, like the Suriel said, and everything will be righted, and it was. And Rhys is kind of floating through this void, and he sees Amren passing by, going to whatever mysterious place all of the dead go to, you know, when it's their time. And it's just like, take my hand. And they like came back together.
Yeah.
Loved it.
And it's interesting because he makes a point of mentioning that like he would have went over faster had she not stayed. And like the fact that she was talking to him and trying to get him to stay and like trying to get help, he stayed longer than he normally would have. And that is why he was still there when Tamlin finally gave up his piece. And when he came out, he's like, oh, it's still only my magic that I have, so I didn't steal from you guys. That was funny to me because, again, he's just like the, like, clown.
The clown.
Well, like, that is a very unserious thing to say right after you come back to life is, hey, I didn't steal from you guys. It's still just my magic in here.
Little coping mechanism, yeah. Mm-hmm. There's so much. And there's like Feyre telling Rhys how Tamlin had burned the wings and to give him that closure about his sister and mother. And then I think the last scene is like another final council meeting, I guess, to talk about how to
like
rebuild.
A peace treaty.
Yeah, and Feyre specifically wants the old treaty to be completely, redone and recreated. And they have representatives of the humans and the Fae there. And Queen Vassa is there in human form because they specifically hold it at nighttime when she'll be in her human form. So there's still some hope there.
She's asking if Feyre can break her curse. And Feyre's like, well, I don't even know what's on you.
She's Feyre curse breaker.
That's why it's like making me think that we're going to meet the person that has trapped her in this curse.
Which we suspect is the other sibling, right, of the Bone Carver and Striga.
Yeah.
So should be a really interesting guy.
Should be nice. I mean,
should be very nice fellow.
Yes.
And then there's the problem of the other mortal queens that are still alive, right?
And not mortal anymore.
Yes. They're just in hiding somewhere, scheming. So I think, was that it? I think
that's where we end.
What did you think of Tamlin's stuff this book?
Mixed? He's much like Kale. He is growing again on me, but I think he has a lot to make up for. I think he made like some big strides in the fact that he chose the right side. Like finally his loyalty is to the right side. And we do find out that he's been playing this quadruple agent. And he did give Rhys the piece to save him. So I hope he finds happiness, like that he wished for her. I hope he finds his person. Like it's not Feyre, but I hope like he does find his person.
Yeah, I think Rhys's death was like finally a wake-up call for Tam because out from everything he still somehow felt like Rhys had some kind of power over Feyre and it really wasn't her making decisions, when it was the whole time. So I think he finally came to terms with that. And then it's just every scene that Tamlin was in, he was always alone. Like he didn't have any sentinels. He didn't have any friends. And you see him kind of backslide in the final scene when he shows up to this final peace treaty meeting alone again. And he sees Lucien in the Illyrian armor. And he's just like, even my fucking best friend is like, not in my court anymore type of thing. Like he feels betrayed. So he's in this very like dark lonely place. And he still obviously has a rage problem. Like he just does. He has to work through it. And you just feel kind of bad for him.
But he also has like this, like, for me, it's kind of like that person that like, you're my best friend. You can't have other friends.
Yeah.
And
well, it just hurts that it's like Rhys.
I think he needs to realize that like there's more to the story, just like there was more to the story with him. But he doesn't give that same grace to other people. He wants them to give it to him and be like, well, I was fighting for you the whole time. And I have a reason why I locked you in that room. But he doesn't like want to listen to anybody else and see that they have reasons. Like Rhysand, like, one of the things he holds against him is Amarantha's whore. But like there was a reason. A very good reason, and he doesn't want to listen to that. So yes, you feel sorry for him, but you also like, you're bringing this on yourself by not being willing to communicate and by thinking that you're always right, as opposed to allowing others to like eliminate you.
Feyre wrote that little note. Thank you. I hope you find happiness too. Which is like, yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
Godspeed.
And Lucian
Jam.
went back to like kind of talk to him and stuff too.
Because they do. They have a lot to talk through.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes. So again, I hope he does continue on the positive growth train that he's on.
Mm-hmm. There's just so many little eye openers. This, like with Helion being Lucian's father, and nobody knows. Helion doesn't know. Lucian doesn't know, and Rhysand was just like, keep this information to yourself, Feyre. And so there's going to be a whole bunch of
like because that's her friend, and he's like, yeah, keep it to yourself.
And it's also interesting that Feyre is reflecting like, oh, if anything happens to Helion, Lucian is technically the
next heir.
Will inherit the day.
Wouldn't that be a way of figuring out that you're not your father's child? Is like you inherit the throne of another kingdom, and you're like, oh, no, my mom slept around. Okay,
yeah. Oh, Helion.
We'll see what happens because they needed another day of peace treaties because they were not doing so hot.
No. See, it's just I highlighted these little scenes. So it's like one of the end scenes with Azriel and Elaine. The smile grew bright enough that it lit up even Azriel's shadows across the room. I would like to build a garden, she declared. After all this, I think the world needs more gardens. And it's just like that. There's like a line like that a couple times in this book, and I'm just like,
yeah,
I could totally see it. I mean, you
as the shadows need that positive vibe, like his
but then there's Lucian, her mate, and it's like he's a good guy deep down.
Well, he has Helion's looks, so like he'll be fine, or Helion or whatever. Yeah, no, I'm there for both of them. Maybe it'll be a throuple.
That would be different, right?
Like, I mean, we've heard that Azriel is kinky and a freak. Maybe he'll be down for being the third.
Any other scenes that you want to talk about, or any last minute thoughts on for A Court of Wings and Ruin, or anything in this series so far?
No, I don't think so. I did have to read this very, very quickly. So
Tera says this every week.
Well, I did, and I do, and life sucks sometimes, but like I don't have 10 hours in 1 week to read a book, Sandra, so I have to do it very quickly. But I'm sure that there are things we missed. And if we did miss something that you want to call out to, feel free to call us out and be like, hey, you missed this important part. Like, did you not see this? Yes.
Are you a dum-dum?
Yes, I'm down for like learning more than I picked up the first time, because there's so much, as Sandra has mentioned multiple times in these books, that you might miss a key part in like a sentence that is calling out to like 2 books from now.
I don't know how Sarah J Maas does this. She has to have like a spreadsheet of like just like hundreds of things.
I wove this in here.
Yeah.
Yes, like I'd be like, I forgot what I put in 3 books ago. Like I have to reread it now.
I don't remember what I did this morning, so it's like, okay, Sarah, calm down.
Yeah, I don't remember what I read this morning. Like what happened in this book? But I like yours. I like yours a lot.
The pink and the gray. Pretty. Yeah.
Like I like the pink and the gray better than the pink and the black here.
I mean, that's the same pink as like the inside cover. Yeah. If you're only a listener and not watching, Tera and I are like holding up the books and comparing the hardcover and paperback.
I don't like the yellow, I guess.
I love yellow.
I like yellow
color.
as a color. Yeah. I just don't like it with this combination. Like, I don't know. As much as I like the pink and gray. Don't come at me.
Anyways, we hope you enjoyed the second half of A Court of Wings and Ruin, and Tera and my commentary and kind of summary. Can we call it a summary?
I think it was a little out of order. But I mean,
Whatever.
things did happen. They just might have not happened in the order we said.
Yes. Now, the next episode on Monday is going to be a little bit different because it's a very, very short novella, A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J Maas. And so that one, we're just going to read the whole thing and then we're going to discuss it on Monday. And then we dive into A Court of Silver Flames to finish up.
Are we going to the Winter Kingdom or the Winter Court on this one? Because I mean,
I'm not going to tell you anything, I'm not telling you anything, and you're not going to read the synopsis. You're just going to go in blind how you've been, because it's so much fun. And with every book we read, we can share more memes.
Yes.
About the series.
I really liked that meme that you sent me about, like, it's got the Ice Age person and it's like Feyre and Az teaching her how to fly. And he's like, fly, you flightless bird.
And just plummets.
I loved that. That was great.
Like Tera said, drop a comment if you like this video. If you haven't rated and reviewed our podcast yet on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, please do so because it's a huge help. And then we will be posting updates on @StoryDarlings is our handle everywhere. So we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.